Yesterday evening against the San Antonio Spurs, McCollum of the Portland Trail Blazers went down in the game with what at the time was called a left leg injury. We couldn't really tell much from the actual footage of the injury about what might have happened, but we just found out today that after an MRI, he's been diagnosed with a Popliteus strain of his left knee. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Brian, and for those new, I'm a doctor and a sports fan, and it's my goal here to combine those two interests to help explain different sports medicine topics and sports injuries in a way that's easier for you to learn from and understand. So before you go out there and start getting on Google trying to figure out what exactly this injury is, I'll tell you right off the bat that the Popliteus is a pretty strange muscle that we don't see injured very often and has some kind of unique functions in the knee. You'll hear it pronounced Popliteus or Popliteus, and in this video I'm gonna make it easier for you guys to understand what exactly this muscle is, what its function is in the knee, and then if it fits with the mechanism of injury for McCollum and what this means going forward. As always, subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and let's get started. Looking at the initial injury footage, it was really hard to tell what exactly had happened. I saw it when it occurred and really couldn't identify anything in particular that stood out. We didn't have a very good clear angle of the picture, but now that we know what the injury is, I think we can look back and shed some light on it. This is our model of the knee. In the front we have the femur, we have our tibia or the shin bone, and then on the outside we have the fibula. Turning it around on the back is when we see the Popliteus muscle. So this muscle originates up actually on the lateral portion of the femur, dives deep down behind the LCL ligament, and then wraps around forming the floor of the popliteal fossa before inserting down on the medial portion of the tibia. It's not a big muscle, it's not providing a ton of power to the knee, but it has some key characteristics that help the knee function biomechanically. Remember that a muscle is basically just like a rope running between 2 points, and so to think of how it's going to work, you have to think of what would happen if there was a rope and you pulled the rope. Since it's running from the outside to the inside, if we look down on axis with the knee here, we can see that if it pulls, it's going to cause these two bones to rotate on each other or to spin. You can see as I rotate the femur that it pulls a little bit on that muscle because it's keeping it in place. If you Google this muscle, one of the things you'll read is that it unlocks the knee. What that means is whenever the knee is in full extension or straight up and down, the way that the femur and the tibia are positioned on each other, it's not as easy for the knee to then bend or flex. What the Popliteus does is whenever it fires, it squeezes these two ends together, which causes the bones to rotate on one another so that the knee can flex and move more freely. So it provides that little bit of rotation to unlock the knee so the knee can flex. Next, we need to understand the idea of internal and external rotation of the tibia. And so internal rotation is whenever you point your feet inward or point your toes inward, as opposed to external rotation of the tibia would be when your toes rotate outward. Thinking of this muscle or this rope between here, if we take this bone and we rotate it one way or another, it's going to stretch and pull this muscle. And that leads into one of the mechanisms to where this muscle can be injured. With any sort of extreme external rotation of the tibia, that's going to cause this whole complex to spin and rotate, pulling this muscle and putting stress on that muscle itself. If we jump back here to the footage of the injury, in hindsight you can kind of look and see that his leg does land awkwardly and then looks as if it's externally rotating or pointing outward when he comes down on the player's foot. So it's reasonable to think that that external rotation is part of what put the strain on this muscle that caused it to get a small tear. Another important thing I want to tell you about while I've got the anatomy model here is this idea of posterolateral corner structures. Posterior is back, so the back side of the knee. Lateral meaning the outside or the side that the fibula is on, and then the corner. So there's a lot of key structures right here in this corner on the anatomy that play a role in the overall function of the knee. Those structures involve the LCL or the lateral collateral ligament, which provides the kind of side-to-side bending stability of the knee joint. You then have that tendon of the Popliteus muscle that's part of that structure. There's a ligament that runs from the fibula up across the Popliteus tendon. And in that space, you also have the posterolateral corner of the meniscus. So these structures combine together to give you this posterolateral corner. And usually if one structure is injured in that area, then others can be injured as well. So It's pretty uncommon to see just an isolated popliteus tendon injury. Usually there's some sort of damage to these other structures. But it's important to know about them because they all work together to provide much needed stability to the knee. If one of them is injured or deficient, then your knee is not as stable and you're more susceptible to other more severe injuries. So it's pretty uncommon to see an isolated injury like this. I was really surprised when I saw the news pop up because when you actually do research to try to find papers about this, there's really only kind of some scattered case reports. It's uncommon to have an isolation. Usually you have some sort of injury to the rest of the structures in that area, but it's good that he doesn't because those would require more repair. The key to watch in his recovery is going to be how stable his knee is with functional basketball activities. Another key function of the popliteus is that it actually attaches to the backside of the meniscus, and whenever it contracts, it pulls the meniscus back a little bit so that when the knee bends, it doesn't pinch the meniscus as much. So if that muscle's not working properly or it's damaged, it's not going to be properly positioning the meniscus, so you could be prone to meniscus injuries. Likewise, if it's not firing properly, you make the rest of those structures more susceptible to injury, and so you could have something like an LCL injury be more common. There's not really specific dedicated therapy to do for that muscle. It's such a small isolated one that it's going to be just resting the knee and then working on getting back that general strength and support just in all those structures around the knee itself. You can't really isolate out just the popliteus muscle to work it in the weight room or something like that. It's more about that dynamic loading of the knee as a whole that they're going to be gradually working through to make sure that it's nice and structurally sound and he's not having pain before getting back on the court. So we'll see. They estimate that they'll reevaluate in about a week, which probably means they're going to see how it's feeling, how stable the knee is, and then determine what the next step is in getting back to play. But it certainly doesn't count him out for the year or count him out for the postseason. That's it for the video, everybody. Thank you as always for watching. This was a different topic. This is something that's really kind of tricky to understand in terms of what this muscle's doing in terms of the biomechanics of the knee. So I hope it was helpful and better than just getting on Google and trying to read for yourself. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.